Speaking of great products, here's a segue for you. Let's talk about something real important. We've talked about games of the year. We've talked about our favorite games. We've talked about favorite game genres. But the 2010s are now coming to an end in just a few weeks. Not even a couple weeks. I mean, like, we're talking days. We got about 10, 12, 13 days until the end of the 2010s. The decade is coming to a close. So I want to talk about our games of the decade. A lot of websites are doing this. A lot of shows are doing this. Obviously, we're the best, so we're gonna do our own thing. I mean, you listening to this for a reason. But we're talking about genre-defying classics, even that will transcend into the 2020s and beyond. Games of the decade, and like, hey, I mean, the game could have came out this year or last year. I mean, anytime in the last 10 years, really. So games in the 2010s, your top, let's call it top three. I'm happy to start. If either of you guys have any on the tip of your tongues, I mean, feel free to take it away. Otherwise, I mean, I'm happy to kick this off.
I would love to hear you go first, Tom. How are you, brother?
I mean, first one, and I think at this point, it's almost like it's a meme with how widespread and how widely accessible this game is. But the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is an unmitigated, timeless classic, and is now like a standard in its genre. Bethesda themselves has poked fun at themselves on how many different platforms you can get Skyrim on, saying that you could get it on Alexa or put it on your smart fridge or some shit like that. Skyrim redefined the dark fantasy open world trend, and I would hesitate to say that it hasn't inspired other games. I mean, even The Witcher 3. I mean, The Witcher 1 and 2 were obviously had plenty of foundation to build off there, but other dark fantasy titles, even aesthetics and TV shows. I mean, if you don't think that anybody in the writer's room or producers or artists on Game of Thrones didn't have a little Skyrim playing in the background when they got home, you're out of your fucking tree. Again, granted, there's tons of source material, there's tons of fantasy properties out there, but I think that Skyrim has created the mold for other open world games to live up to, even open world Bethesda games, and I don't think anything that Bethesda's put out has come close to it yet. Love Fallout 3, love New Vegas. I liked Fallout 4. I wouldn't say I loved it. We won't talk about any other Fallout games, but Bethesda created a timeless classic with Skyrim, and I think that it's a masterclass in storytelling. It's one of the most atmospheric role-playing games that I've ever played, and it's completely engrossing to the point where, basically for the better part of the last decade, almost everything that I've played that has a remotely similar beat to Skyrim is going to get compared to it. So, people... I like it. Yeah, so that's my first one. I do have two other ones that I want to talk about, but I figured I'll send it around to you guys so we can kind of alternate a little bit.
Yeah, so I have one and one only. Let me back into this. So the game that I am going to put at my game of the decade, let me preface it by saying, Lord forgive me, but it's time I go back to the old me. This game was released on September 17th, 2013.
91713.
That's right. Right now, it's the third best-selling game of all time, with just about 110 million copies sold, behind Minecraft and Tetris. Minecraft has around 150 million, and Tetris, it's so tough to kind of calculate it because it's been available so many places. But for the sake of the story, it has over 500 million mobile copies sold to date, or downloaded to date. That's Tetris just on mobile. You can't track other platforms, like I said. And right now, December 2019, this is the sixth most watched game on Twitch at 35.3 million viewer hours. It's a lot of hours. And my game is going to be Grand Theft Auto 5. GTA 5 is my game of the decade, a game that came out in 2013, still has so much steam behind it. You want to talk about the single player mode, the campaign? absolutely incredible. You could play
Mm-hmm.
between 3 different characters, Michael, Franklin, and Trevor. The online, they added a fucking casino, a legit casino in a high-rise building, table games. You can interact with other players, all these different cars that they continue to drop. They're on the ball. And if you want to talk about the last little cherry on top of Grand Theft Auto, GTA RP, which you can call it online still, but to me, it's a whole different spin on it. Grand Theft Auto 5 role playing is one of the funnest things in the world. And some of my favorite streamers to watch do GTA RP. And it's some of the most entertaining shit I've ever watched. Even got me into it for a while. I was Sean Fitzpatrick, a South Station junkie that moved to LA to try to be an actor. But it was so fun. We used to play with Steve. Steve used to play the guitar when he was like role playing. It was super, super fun. It's amazing to see this game continuing to grow day to day. When the game came out in 2013, it's so cool. It's my favorite game that has come out in the Grand Theft Auto franchise, and this is a game that I will continue to play. I mean, I replayed the campaign mode like a month ago, and that was after beating it like 4 years ago. Like it always stays in my rotation to just fuck around on. Grand Theft Auto 5 is my game of the decade. If you don't agree with it, fuck you.
I think, GTA 5 is a great example of, like, you want to talk about your games where, like, the possibilities, I think the fans have made that game into exponentially larger than what Rockstar ever could have hoped that it would have been. There was nobody in a boardroom who was like, and then what we're going to see next is phase 5 of this game is people are going to be role-playing characters on Twitch. Like, streaming, community, stuff like that. Grand Theft Auto, obviously, like, I feel like most folks can say whether it was, Grand Theft Auto 3 or Vice City or San Andreas or GTA 4, GTA 5, most people that we probably talk to or know or most people listening to this podcast can say that they grew up with a specific GTA game. I think it helped define a generation of people, honestly, or help to, like, influence an entire genre of games. I mean, just like Skyrim was genre defining and like this fantasy open world things, GTA really like defined open world gaming in general, and GTA 5 has helped to cultivate like this whole new way of open world games and how they cater to their fans, enabling them to just do more fun, crazy shit all the time. So
and they make it up as they go. It's like why you guys like D&D, right? Like your day-to-day builds off that story. It's a video game that you make up as you go. Granted, with you guys, it's tabletop, but you continue to build off, and the storyline still exists. Some of these storylines go months and months at a time. And these people that are doing GTA RP, they brought their... So first of all, role-playing has always existed in video games. I don't want to say GTA really invented it because they didn't. But these players from GTA have gone to Red Dead, and they're role-playing in Red Dead Online now with their characters from Grand Theft Auto. And they're like, okay, like this is our past. We're role-playing as like this is before we like got with the times and like had a child who moved to California and yada yada. It's building and building, and it's really, really fucking cool. And I hope nothing but the best thing, because I mean the DLCs are sick too. And no one's like, oh my god, like we need more GTA content. Like there's enough to hold people over, and then when something else drops, like wait, that's a sick addiction. So you hear me out? Addition, and they're like, okay, we can just build off of what we already have going on. Great game, fucking love it, Bob. I really want to know, brother, what's your game of the decade?
So I can fill in the void for the other games that you did not mention, but right off the bat from Rockstar, I think Red Dead Redemption is the best game that they ever created. The first one. I think Red Dead Redemption 1 was the greatest game that they have ever created. I think it's better than GTA 5. I think it's better than Red Dead 2. I think it's better than Bully. I think that's the best game in their catalog, hands down, by far, no competition. So that game will always hold a special place in my heart. I've played through that game so many times. It has my favorite ever DLC ever released with Undead Nightmare. So Red Dead 1 is always going to have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, Red Dead was so different. It really was one of a kind at the time, and that's one of the games in my eyes that stands out in my childhood. I remember sitting in one of my buddy's basement. I was like, "Oh, you have the cowboy game? All right, like let's sit down and play it." And it's a game I'll never forget because it was so different at the time.
So there's that. Then I have to give a mention to Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which came out in 2012, and that game has engulfed my life over the past 8 or so months, and it brought me into a competitive video game scene that I would watch occasionally, but now I watch every single day. So I watch professional Counter-Strike every time it's on. Every time I have the opportunity to watch it, I will. And I follow it. I report on it. I have articles up on the website about my favorite team, Mouse Sports, absolutely destroying people. Love to see it. So Counter-Strike is always going to be there too. Then there are cinematic masterpieces that have come out in this decade. In a decade where developers have been saying, no, people don't want single player games anymore. People don't want narrative focused games anymore. They want multiplayer. They want to buy into passes. They want season passes. They want microtransactions. We want to milk them for every dollar that they have. Mass Effect 2 came out this decade. That's one of the greatest fucking space opera dramas ever created. That'll go down in history as one of the greatest games ever created. And then, in my opinion, a perfect video game, The Last of Us. Mm-hmm. The Last of Us is a perfect game. Yeah, it has solid combat. It has some of the most beautiful storytelling I've ever seen in anything outside of games involving movies and TV shows. The Last of Us is perfection. Mm-hmm. And I haven't found another game to reach that up until God of War 2018, which again is a perfect game in my opinion. Both of these games are the epitome of what single player, narratively driven video games should be, and they are unmatched in their categories. So those two, they're just perfect for me. My game of the decade, though, has to go to Dark Souls.
Wow.
Dark Souls 1 created its own genre. It created the Soulsborne genre that dozens of companies and developers and development teams are trying to replicate right now. From Software has created something that nobody's ever seen before. Yeah, we've had high fantasy action adventure games. Yeah, we've had all this other shit. But the beauty comes into the map design, the RPG system that goes into it, the customer characterization, everything that goes. The combat is impeccable too. But like I played Bloodborne for the first time this year. That's perfection in Soulsborne format. Bloodborne is a perfect game in my opinion. But Dark Souls was the one that fucking created the whole thing. Agreed. So my game of the year or game of the decade is Dark Souls 1. There's no question about it. It created something that didn't exist beforehand.
Very good call on that. Very good call. I mean, this is a big net to cast too, but what a decade it was for video games. There's really? Like so many that you can like put up there. That's a beauty in it.
Yeah. I have two more that I wanted to mention, and I consider all of these. I mean, all of pretty much everything that we have mentioned, except for CSGO, has been a role-playing game, and I think it's been a great decade for role-playing games. I'm a big fan of like role-playing games in general, whether they're tabletop or video games. So I think that while I agree that Dark Souls definitely has paved the way for tons and tons and tons of clones and imitators and whatnot. I mean, there's no other game that gets mentioned more in the breath of like, this is the Dark Souls of X. You know what I mean? Like, you go and have like a fucking 32-ounce ribeye and you're like, this is the Dark Souls of dinners. You know what I mean? Right. Like, this is Dark Souls has become a adjective, which is wild in its own right. And I don't know, there's plenty of games that get used as a benchmark, but Dark Souls way more so than almost anything else. However, I think that for me, the best, one of my favorite games of the decade, I think this is the pinnacle of action RPGs. This is I think the best action RPG of all time is Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 is genre-defining for shooter RPGs, and I think is the best action RPG ever made. It is an all-star cast, and it's like this is this unforgettable cinematic experience. It is completely and utterly unforgettable for those who have played it. The level of customization, the level of exploration. There's not a single second, there's not a single inch of game that's wasted. Every planet that you go to is has a purposeful design to it. There's not a single corridor in that game that doesn't have like a secret or somebody to talk to or, you know, a reason to explore it. And as somebody who's probably played through that game about 5 or 6 times and has every achievement in that game, I've played it on every difficulty. You know, I've played the new game plus 4 different times and have everything completely maxed out and have 100%ed it with side quests and codex entries and stuff like that. Every single millisecond of that game is purposeful, and you know, I don't get to like flex this muscle a lot, but just as somebody with a design oriented brain, you know, somebody who really just appreciates really great design, there is not a pixel of that game that goes to waste. There's no fluff, there's no filler, there's no there's just no comparison when it comes to incredible design. The characters, the backstory, the relationships that you build or break, the fact that you can lose any one of your squad mates in that game and not even carry them over, the fact that you can betray squad mates from previous games who you thought were dead or you thought you were done with or would never see again, and you wouldn't even find out what happened until 2 years later when Mass Effect 3 came out and you were like, holy fuck, I thought this person was dead or gone or I was never going to see them again. And then you got to go back and play the game. It's a masterclass in cinematic gameplay, you know, relationship building and accountability in a video game, to the point where like nothing has mattered that much to me in a game where I'm like, God damn, like I really fucked this up. I got to go back and do this because I want to do right by this character. No other game has done that for me where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to reload a past save. But Mass Effect 2 specifically puts all of that weight on your shoulders as Commander Shepard, who also a thing that I don't think any single game pretty much ever, I don't think has ever done this, where Commander Shepard is just like your total badass, right? You have this, you know, you got your Master Chief, who is Master Chief, one of the biggest badasses in gaming history. Commander Shepard does something that no other game has ever done, where, first of all, there are 2 Shepards. There's Mark Meer, and then there's Jennifer Hale. Jennifer Hale, you could argue, is the mold for like what every badass like female lead in a game should strive to be. Jennifer Hale is a phenomenal actress and voice actress. Mark Meer does an unbelievable job as Commander Shepard, and both of them are equally, not opposite, but like equally and separately incredible leads. Like they're like 1A, 1B for me as like the best leads. And the even better part about that is that you can still customize the shit out of Shepard to make them their own. So you can make Rob Shepard or Chris Shepard or Dom Shepard or whatever, and customize them in different classes with different weapon specializations, with different personalities, with different alignments. So even though they bring these characters to life, it's still you, and that is a level of immersion that no other action RPG has ever even scratched the surface for me. So Mass Effect 2, that is the best game of the decade for me. Skyrim, obviously incredibly important to the genre. I would also throw in honorable mention Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I also think has changed the way people are going to look at. That is going to be the 2020s version of Skyrim, I think. So
definitely.
I don't even know if I need a tinfoil hat this one, but I'm gonna, because I want to do one for this. There is going to be a more minimalist approach to open world games based off Breath of the Wild. We're going to have this more kind of like artsy, minimal, even like the soundtracks and things I think are going to follow the template where Breath of the Wild it's still open world. There's side quests. You have your characters, you have your characters that you might miss if you don't look hard enough. But exactly the same way that Mass Effect 2 does this, where not a single inch of Hyrule's open world in Breath of the Wild is wasted, and every single blade of grass is worth exploring. That is what we're going to see moving forward. It's not going to be how big can we make this map, how many quests can we jam into this game. It's going to be like how much can we really squeeze out of every single quest to make everything feel unskippable.
This is why you got to play Dark Souls.
I will.
Every fucking corner of that game is filled with lore. everything. There's no story to it. It's just it's make your way through the world. Try to, there's an end goal at the end of the game. It's get from the start to that end goal, and then every lore piece you pick up explains more of the world to you.
Yeah, I will definitely play it. Like I said, after I played Jedi Fallen Order, and I got like a kind of a taste for that combat system and stuff like that, I am like ready. I'm ready to dive a little bit further into that. I'm gonna get Dark Souls on Switch, and I'm gonna just lose myself.
I'm definitely not ready for that game. I don't have the patience for that. Can't do it. Not yet, at least. I'm working on it.
John, you gotta play that, and you gotta play Final Fantasy X HD Remake, because that game, mwah,
Ooh.
also perfect. Didn't come out this decade, but still a perfect game.